hear.
If you're driving through the country on a lazy afternoon, or you're watching your children playing after school, they seem to be so unaware of, I know, the things that they'll soon have to take care of. We've got to do something, yeah, to save the children. Soon it will be their turns to try and save the world. Right now they seem to play such a small part of the things that they'll soon be right at the heart of.
Good evening, good evening, good evening, and welcome to our Michelle Speaks Ministries page. And we thank you for joining us for another segment of What's Happening, Brother. I am Minister Malika Rahman, and it is a joy and an honor to come before you this evening with two dynamic, awesome men of God on tonight who are going to share with you some of their thoughts, insight, and perspectives on issues governing our community. But we must first say thank you to Pastor Joshua Gooden and Brother Kim Roberts for joining us again for What's Happening, Brother. It is essential to hear the perspective of Black men about issues concerning Black men. So thank you both for being here this evening.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, yes, yes. My pleasure.
Don't you start. So, we'll jump on in here. So tonight's segment is focused around the 1-year anniversary of the death of George Floyd. We are going to talk about how that impacted our community. We'll talk about the verdict and what that victory meant. And as I was preparing for this, the victory part is kind of the part that really got me, because some would say that it really wasn't a victory, that it was just a notch in the belt of justice. But I'm interested to see how this conversation goes. But I think we have to start back at the beginning. It's been 1 year since his death, but what does that 365 days really look like, right? What does that mean? A lot of people from the community, organizers, politicians were releasing, press releases and making comments and hosting, press conferences around the death of George Floyd and then the 1-year anniversary. But it was interesting to me, and I, want us to talk about that, but everybody had something to say today, May 25th, 2021. Yet a lot of voices were silent May 25th, 2020. And, those 9 minutes and 29 seconds for the people who were present, for George Floyd himself, for the family of George Floyd, I feel like were not 9 minutes and 29 seconds of silence. I feel like it was 9 minutes of agony and fear and a whole lot of things happening. So let's start with that. What does that mean for us? That yes, it is the 1-year anniversary, but what does the death of George Floyd look like from a place of impact?
His death it was just so reminiscent of so many other needless, senseless deaths that were occurring to Black and brown people in their own communities. And it stands up like all the others. It's almost as if you can't say, George Floyd's name without saying everybody else's that was, that had come into play, and in such a short span of time. And there are plenty of others who never got the press coverage, okay, who's near death situations, but never got the press coverage. So these are things that are happening in our community. And for whatever reason, the light shined on this one, okay, because of its just kind of grotesque nature, the just full frontal, murder in our face, on the screen. It stared us in the face. And when death stares you in the face, it raises your consciousness.
I mean, ultimately, I definitely agree with Ken. I think that this was it's hard to say it's a gut blow because we've been hit in the gut so many times to the extent that we've probably been almost conditioned to these hits. And so I think the death of George Floyd from Place of Impact, it really put a larger spotlight on the fact that being Black in America is really one of the greatest sins in the eyes of white men. That it's a sin to be Black in America in the eyes of white men because that's how they look at us. That's how they look at our lives. That's how they look at us. That's how they value us. And so George Floyd's death, I ultimately believe, just showed us how far we have not come into progress as African Americans in America.
That's powerful. Okay, so Josh, one thing you said earlier when Ken and I were preparing this evening, I had Nina Simone playing in the background, and the song that came on was Young, Gifted, and Black.
Mm.
And in our culture, right, for years, we've encouraged that. We've encouraged young people to understand what they mean and what their Blackness represents, what them being gifted represents. Yet and still we live in a country that penalizes us for the very thing we were taught that magnifies and makes us great, right? Specifically for Black men, you almost come out of the womb with a target on your back. And for both of you being fathers, Black sons who are growing up in this culture and day and time, what does that mean for you as you raise your sons, right? And want to protect them, but yet still understand that you send them out into a world that doesn't necessarily care for them the way you do. And understanding that, yes, George Floyd was a 46-year-old man, but the last thing that came out of his mouth was probably the one thing that no parent ever wants to hear their child say, knowing that they cannot be there. It is the cry for, at that moment, it was the cry for his mother. But I don't think that as a father, you hearing that, it makes it any less impactful for you. So when you think about yourself as fathers raising Black sons, what does that mean for you as it relates to the death of George Floyd and how that impacted our community?
A heavy burden. Bible said children are a gift, God, blessing, and but in this society that we live in, raising that boy is a blessing, burden. Have a being father, but the burden of going to black certainly to act and how encounter police, how walk down the street and what to do in certain situations. It creates a, it's scary praying, between walk from home for make it home safe. I need to walk with you. I ultimately think it is something in number.
You were there, brother. You was kind of breaking up, but I know what you're saying in regards to it being both a blessing in a battle, and that in between blessing and battle is a lot of prayers that are going out that kind of bridge the gap, if you will, between them walking out and experiencing life at its fullest, at the same time, protecting them from life at its fullest, right? Because there's the protective bubble we would like to put our children in, and then there's the moments when we can't be the protective bubble, and the pressure that's on us as fathers, as Black men, to what do we do in between that? There used to be a time when I used to be able to say to young Black men, do this and you will be safe.
Right.
Hey, do this when the police come, not if the police come, but when the police come, do this. There's no such safeguards now. You have to be ready in that moment to hold yourself together and think at every moment what you're going to do. That young military officer who got pulled over by the police down in Texas, he probably saved his life by not pulling over on that dark highway and driving to a gas station before the police literally pulled him out of there, pulled him out of his car, tased him, and everything like that. The fact that he was able to get there and maintain a sense of self and keep his composure, that probably saved his life. So it's a very dynamic and fluid situation that's going on. It's like you got to teach how to remain calm and how to think your way through that situation, because it may be different each and every time. Mm-hmm. It's not a static situation. It's very dynamic.
I think that plays a big part in how we look at the role of Black men in society, right? Men in general are conceptually this strong person, right? You're taught to be strong and be the provider and be all these things. And, in the Black community, you better not cry, suck it up. You ain't no cry baby, you ain't no sissy, all of these things. And in watching that video, and the men that I know that have served in all, arms of the service, I know that the pride that he had to swallow in that situation. And I know that happens in so many others that we don't get to see on camera, but that Black men across this country have had to swallow that pride in order to save themselves, in order to get back home to their children, in order to get back home to their families. In those moments, I feel like Josh said this earlier, there's an expectation that we just accept what's happening because we, swallow the pride so you can get home safe, swallow the pride so you can get home safe. And as it relates to George Floyd, what I don't think ever happened that day was that the officer never thought he wasn't going to make it home. There was never a thought in his mind that he would not get home to his family. Yet George Floyd and a lot, much like many others, have to think about that. The gentleman who just left his base literally was driving home in full uniform. And the one thing that, most people, if you know anyone who has served in the armed forces, knows is that what you don't do is ask someone to lay their uniform on the ground. That is a complete sign of disrespect. So one is the disrespect for the uniform, but then it's the disrespect of me as a person. And I have to swallow both of those things because, as you said, Ken, I want to get home. Right? I want to get home. And for the people who are listening to us tonight, the men, the women, the family, when does I want to get home stop being the standard by which we have to teach our children to come out the house? It's not, put your coat on because it's raining. Put your book bag on. Don't forget your stuff because you need it for school. But we're teaching them life-saving skills. Don't talk back to the police. Make sure you do this. Put your hands where they can see them. All these things, and it is really life-saving mechanisms so that your children come back home, so that your sons come back home, your brothers come back home. These things that you hope happen, and you're like, please, God, no. Like, not my husband, not my brother, not my father. These are real things. So when we look at that, when does that stop being the standard? And how, let me say, how do we get back to no longer be the standard?
That the starts with mindset. So how we raise our children, not as African Americans, but how we raise our as people who live in certain behaviors are learned. So that's what you're going to carry out. So it really homes. It's a home. I'm gonna work through.
You was coming over choppy for me, brother. Do you want to check your mic on that? I think the coming home is the new standard. Unfortunately, it was, keep your hands where they can be seen. Don't do any sudden moves. Say yes, sir, no, sir. Ask permission to do things. May I get my ID? My registration is in my glove box. May I reach for it? All that used to be the part of the process. Now, not so much. Now you're better served by cutting on your cell phone and videotaping, almost live streaming everything that's going on in order to ensure that you're treated humanely. But as I think about your question, and how do we deal with the fact that we have to teach our children, how do you get home? What comes up for me is just how the struggle to come home in any other situation. Like, every day is a struggle to get home. The police are just one obstacle, to the getting home safely, routine. They're mixed up in it. But the challenge becomes, now that this has become so prevalent in our society, how do we ensure that, hey, I'm taking the steps to think about how do I get home? We just have a lot of everyday heroes. Look, my sons, they're just an everyday hero. Get to school, get to basketball practice, come home. That is a mission. Okay, with orders and a uniform and a salute.
Mm-hmm.
I need you to do these things. And sometimes, don't move. I don't want you to catch SEPTA, just stay there. I'm coming for you. Not because I don't want you to be independent, but because I want to make sure that you get a chance to share your independence for years and years to come.
Right.
So, so my boys, I see them as everyday heroes. I see a lot of Black and brown people as everyday heroes just making it through. And those heroes came out to protest, and those protests impacted change. But if for change to become permanent, we have to not snatch power, which is what we've always been doing, thinking that if we snatch power, power will give us power. No. War only begets war. Power never gives up power easily. So now you're fighting. The only thing that changes, that makes the value of the pain that we suffered and the protest that we went through is not to fight for power, but to change policy. We have to change policy, and policy means that we got to vote. We can't go and march down the street and think we've done our George Floyd duty. If we don't change the goal, which is we don't ever want George Floyd to do the situation to come up again, we have to impact policy, and the only way to impact policy is the vote. And guess what? We voted. Philadelphia came up large in this presidential election. And for those who voted once, we got to vote again. Because policy changes is what's going to have an impact long term. And people are frightened by the fact that Black people and brown people vote. And that's why they're trying to suppress the vote, because they're afraid what happens. Black and brown people vote and we get a Biden. Okay, Black and brown people don't vote, we'd be in another term of Trump. Period to end.
Mm-hmm. No, that is very true. That type of extremism exists in all platforms. Pastor Gooden, did you want to partake in that? I know you.
Yeah, am I better now?
Yeah,
that's my boy. I hear you now.
Listen, kid got your back because he real calm with it. He like, brother, I think it's a little something going on with your connection.
All right, don't let me be the only lightning rod out here now. I got to get your voice in the room.
I ultimately definitely agree with what Kim was saying about policy. We have to vote. I also think that it is about, what I was saying earlier was that it's about upbringing. And so it's not only just for us to teach our children certain things, we need our counterparts to teach their children certain things. So if you're teaching hate at home, then what you're raising is little children who are going to create more hatred in the world. And so our counterparts have to speak to that, and that means calling it out. I remember being in a conversation with a group of our counterparts, and they're like, this is wrong, what took place is wrong, and I just feel, for African Americans and stuff like that have to go through this. But the question I always ask is, do you call out people who look like you? You're saying it's wrong, that's one thing. But do you call out people who look like you? Mm-hmm. Or do you just say, oh, that's a darn shame, man. You still vote for people who have hatred in their hearts. And how many politicians do we see, and I hope I'm not jumping ahead, who are resisting a bill that would change and affect, the lives of African American communities as they engage with police officers? How many Republicans do we see fighting, even Black Republicans,
Mhm.
which is a great shame. But how many people do we see fighting against these things? And so I think that it really does start at home. That you can create and impact change in small, significant ways by beginning at home. So if our counterparts start teaching their children how to love everybody and accept everybody for who they are, then we don't have to teach our children how to um, roll down the windows when a cop pull you over, drop your keys out, put your hands all the way out the window, turn all your lights in the car, fall on the ground when they tell you to. We don't have to do that. Take your hoodie off. We don't have to teach our children those things. If our counterparts will begin teaching their children acceptance and inclusion in America, in a land that don't belong to them, but yet, you know, you feel like you can and control the narrative.
Okay. Yeah. Absolutely right. Come on, stand up. Be an advocate for change, or be an agent for the status quo. You know what? I don't even care. Identify.
Pick a side and stay there.
Pick a side so that I know. Don't try to dance on the line. This is not a time to be in the gray. It's time to pick a side. There's a whole bunch of things riding on this. It is as important what you do with your family unit as an advocate or an ally as it is what you do with how you interact, how you walk, how you talk, how you confront. See, because this is where it gets a little uncomfortable. You got to confront some of this stuff, because if this the experiment on democracy is going to work, white people are going to have to talk to other white people about inclusion, about equity,
yes,
about diversity.
yes.
I can't be the person with the problem and the person that got to find the solution.
Right.
Okay, I'm doing double duty.
Right.
Right.
And
right.
you have
Absolutely.
to be taste of it at that. Once you come up,
I'm crazy.
One thing I want to touch on though that actually something that both of you said when Josh was talking about teaching our children to roll the window down, put the keys outside. That is almost kind of a rites of passage, right? How to cut the grass, how to paint, how to change the tire, it's how to survive. And one of the things that I talk about amongst, my colleagues is that law enforcement as a whole is a family business. It's a legacy to become a cop for our counterparts, right? To the point that Josh made, hatred is a legacy. You're taught that. You are taught, it is instilled in you, like your multiplication timetables, like knowing addition. It is taught to you to know that these particular groups of people we don't like, and this is how we treat them. Yet in that, they'll sit in a room with you, because I believe that there's a point in time where the issues in life become less about race and more about class. Our counterparts will accept us in certain spaces when they believe that you've shown them that you belong there.
Right.
I can sit in the room with Pastor Joshua Gooden and speak to him and talk to him about certain issues, and we can have dialogue. But if I ever ran into Josh the man, my thoughts may be different. If I sit in the room with Ken Roberts and he begins to talk to me from a professional dialogue, and I understand what he's saying and he's teaching and coaching me and building me and helping me to develop, I understand. But yet Ken Roberts the man, not so much. The two are not separate. Ken Roberts is Ken Roberts. He is a Black man every day of the week, every hour of the day. Whether you know Pastor Joshua Gooden or Joshua Gooden, he is a Black man every day of the week. The issues that we kind of run into is that people expect to say to you, and this is the line that I love, when they like you, well, I don't see color. I appreciate you for who you are. Well, that's not true because you don't have on a purple shirt with green pants. Your outfit matches because you see color.
Absolutely.
You know that your car is blue, not white, because you see color. Right? And when we say that, it is almost a dumbing down of the reality that we're different. It's a safe way to say, I see you without saying that I see you. Almost the undercut acknowledgement, right? Of I'm a help you to believe that I'm with it, but I'm not, right? So when we talk about this with our counterparts, how do we get to the space where we say, like, hey, I know what you're saying to me, but do you say this at your cookout? Do you say this at the barbecue?
I'm afraid that when they say that, period, they could be anywhere. You know, if they don't see color, you know, that's a problem, because I want you to see me in all my fullness. But what happens is they're trying to create a language that they can understand to explain what they're seeing, and sometimes you know they step on it, they step in it, they you know, I have people, close friends, I know what they mean, but Lord have mercy, don't say this without me being around you, because what you just said would you know, create a situation. And so they need to have that language. But Black people need to have that language too, because just because we're Black and brown don't mean that we can articulate, you know, how do we walk through this. It's an evolving conversation. That's why I wish that there was some kind of commission. Like we missed out on the opportunity. South Africa did it very well, I think, when they got out of apartheid, and they had a commission that forced everyone to talk about what happened.
Mm-hmm.
We just never had that conversation. So now there's white people that walk around and think, I never owned no slaves, so you know, that ain't me. Okay. You know, I didn't do this and I didn't do that. And so that's not me. When really, guess what? You are benefiting from all of that. So maybe it's not you, but you started off from a position in in a 100-yard dash at the 50-yard line.
Right.
Expecting me to catch up and wondering why I might be a little bit winded. Stuff. We gotta have a conversation.
I think we also have to stop giving passes.
Mm.
And so a lot of times, you know, we'll give people, any of my counterparts know you ain't ever going to be able to say things around me, certain things around me, and me not call you out on it. What you say at the barbecue, on the ranch, or at the boys club, but you will never say it around me, and you're not going to get a pass. And I think that, like to the point that you make, Ken, we need to stop giving passes to ourselves, because we allow ourselves to, we belittle our own selves at times with some of the language that we use. And then we get upset when other people use the language. But if we change the language, then I think we can help, you know, get rid of these passes. You know, there's a game that I think is so funny. It's called Black Card Revoked. And so if you don't know certain information and things like that, you got to give up your black card. And unfortunately, there are we have counterparts who believe that they have black cards. Mm-hmm. And because they know the language, they know the music, they know the fashion, you know what I mean? When in reality, I could never get a white card. Think about it. I I can talk as proper as I want to talk, and go to some of the finest institutions in America, and still will never get a white card. And I don't want it. That's the thing. We don't want white cards. We just want to be equal.
We'll be the human card. Give me the human card. I'll be all right with that.
You know, and I think that matters. You know, is there a world where you can just have I'm human card, where I'm respected? I am. I'm respected for the color of my skin. I'm respected for the style of my hair. I'm respected for my culture and my ethnicity. I'm respected for all of that. And I have a space where I can be authentically me and not have to blend in to fit the environment that I'm in. Why should I have to change who I am to make people feel comfortable? When as Black people, we've been uncomfortable for so long. We've been uncomfortable. So no, I'm not going to make you feel comfortable. I'm going to make you feel uncomfortable. I'm going to make you feel uncomfortable when you made an assumption to fry chicken and bring watermelon to this event because you knew that Black people were going to be there. I'm going to make you feel uncomfortable. No, why did you bring that? We like pizza. we like we like lasagna. Okay. We like empanadas. No, you made an assumption. You know what I mean? And we're gonna point you out for that. We're gonna call you out. You get no pass over here. And when we stop giving out the passes, I think that's when we change the trajectory of what we see in terms of engagement between us and our counterparts.
It's going to have to be all. It's going to have to be all of it. You know, it's going to have to be the Malcolm. It's going to have to be the Martin. You know what I mean? You know, because there's a lot of early in my career. You know, I just felt like it was my mission to educate and to push the message and the agenda. Man, I'm tired. I'm tired because I'm keep on having the same conversation, and it's a lot of weight to have that on your shoulders, but it's necessary. And so I pick my battles. Like it's not every. I don't die on every hill now. I used to, jump right on. You go ahead. You got a couple more situations to go to before I speak to you about this particular faux pas you just made. But when I speak to you, it's going to be critical, and you're going to be ready to hear it because I done watched you establish a pattern of behavior that's just it just serves no purpose. So yeah, we gotta do it. We gotta educate. We gotta call people out on it. We gotta have that daily dialogue about what's going on, and we gotta be able to do it in a safe space, and we gotta make people feel uncomfortable, and we gotta be uncomfortable with some of that too. Like again, like I said, when I was going to school, I was a minority. Okay, that was before my parents who were Black or who were Negroes and the movement of Black Power, right? Then I became minorities. And then somewhere in between there, I became African American. And now I'm Black again. But I've introduced this other word, this other N word that I probably can never get my arms around because of how I grew up. Like the N word will never be an okay word for me. I don't care who says it. I don't care if they say it with an ER or with a GH, with an AH. I don't care how you say it.
Right.
I'm just never going to be comfortable with it. Okay. And if we're going through that evolution, imagine white people who ain't never had to change their identification ever. Imagine the thought process. They just stepping into anything. If they say colored, if they say Negro, if they say black, if they say African American, if they say minority, they don't know what the hell to say. So,
Hey, you.
okay.
Yeah, use guys has become a race of people now. Use guys.
Using y'all.
Yeah, use guys and y'all people. Wait a minute. What people are we talking about here? What people are we talking about here?
Yeah.
But it's funny. It's funny that we've kind of segued to this because I think that it kind of really takes us into just the next part of this conversation is that the reality is that when the verdict came out, everybody was so excited. It was almost as if a sense of humanity had been restored. All things were okay in the moment. And Pastor Gooden and I had spoke that day, and it was almost like, like, you good? How you feel? You all right? How you feeling? And it was a moment in which you understand that as a Black man, hearing what was getting ready to happen was going to fall and be different than it was for the rest of the world. But what I found very interesting was that the jury demographic was not what you would think. 57% of the jury was white. And based on what we've just talked about, do you all think that this verdict was an opportunity for our counterparts to silently voice their opinion, silently speak up, and be in a room where they could invoke change, even if it's based on their level of discomfort, right? But being in this room and in this space, was it, or do you think, I should say, was it an opportunity for them to get it right without going public?
You might want to start, King, because mine might not be too nice.
Look, I don't think that the verdict was a verdict of conscience. I think it was a verdict of observation. Like there was no message behind it or around justice. The protests and the marches. This verdict was not in support of that. This verdict was in support of the overwhelming evidence of observation. Okay, if and I'm not even convinced that he going to jail. I mean, he there now, but the police got that immunity. I mean, and look, until police call out other police, until police officers got to be held accountable for the decisions that they make. If we don't change those policies, this right here is just a show. Okay, the conversations that we need to have with our white brothers and sisters, we got to name it, we got to call it, and they got to pick a side. Period. The end. If not, then you're racist. Period. Pick a side. And whatever it is, I don't care. Either you are or you're not. We've gotten to that level of specificity.
That's all right. Well, I don't, because you said this and it made me think of it. When the police chief testified, I don't know if you all remember, but if you seen the look on Derek Chauvin's face, it was almost as if he knew that at this point, like, you ever watch a movie and they kind of pan to a person's face and it's like, if the comments or if the commentary was there and the captions came up, it would say, the moment this person knew, all things were over. Mm-hmm. It was in that moment. And I don't think that it was a coincidence that the police chief in that moment happened to be a Black man. But when he took that stand and sat down and began to answer his questions and describe what happened, it was in that moment that I believe Derek Chauvin knew that as a police officer, this is over for me. Because now it's not my colleague, now it's not my sergeant, it's not my lieutenant. It is the chief of the department who is saying that everything that I did in this moment was fundamentally wrong, to say the least, right? And now we get to this point where the messaging, right? No, it was not conscious. It was definitely about the facts, right? This happened, so this is what we have to do. Yet it sends a message to the people, and we'll kind of tap into that when we talk about, you know, this notion of victory. But it ultimately sends a message to the people that gives them this false narrative of, am I excited or what? Because like you said, Ken, what happens if he doesn't go to jail? He's there now, yes. But what happens when he doesn't get the sentence, we think? Or what happens when he doesn't stay long enough? When is it, or what is it that will ever be good enough, you know, for us as a people, things like this happen?
You have to tell them, Josh.
So I think that number one, I definitely agree with Ken that the decision was made based upon observation, the evidence that was presented. It was not based upon whether or not, you know, this movement or whether or not, you know, the this attack on a Black life. It wasn't even based upon standing up and saying we stand against this. What this was basically, you know, this is what the evidence says, so we're gonna go along with it. And so if the evidence went in a different direction, then they would have went in that direction. So I just don't think that 57% was you know, enough for me. You know, I don't think that they were moved with compassion. I ultimately think that they just said, this is what the evidence showed. These are what these, you know, these witnesses testified to. And so we're just going to have to take this, because if we come back and we have any other decision besides this, we're going to have to deal with the consequences of this. That's another part that I think they were fearful of, because if the decision came back in another way, this country would have been turned upside down. Mm-hmm. Because there was no way that they could come back and not find him guilty after all of this. And so I think that fear played a major part in this decision. The fear of what America would look like if this verdict was not guilty. And I'm saying this from the White House all the way down. I'm saying this from the White House all the way down, that if that decision did not come back guilty, there was a great fear that swept across this nation, to the extent that police officers were being put in place, businesses were shutting down, people were putting wood up in their business, in front of their businesses and things like that, because they were fearful that this verdict could go in another way. And think about that. Why would we, based upon the evidence that was given, why would there even be any form of trepidation that this cop would not be found guilty? Because this is the standard in America, that a cop can take a life and be found not guilty. A white cop.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they feared for this. So there was no move on the conscience. This was definitely a decision based out of fear and based off of the observation of evidence. And I do agree with you, Ken, that until I see him behind bars for the time that he is supposed to serve, I'm not going to believe it. I ain't going to believe it. And I'm sorry if I'm squashing your victory conversation, but it's not victory yet.
No, it's not. It's not victory yet. And you know, I package victory in three ways, right? I package victory in justice being served. Okay, justice being served. And so far, we're moving down the justice being served line. The other part to this is, you know, the conscious raising of all Americans. We're absolutely failing in that. We're becoming more divided, not more collected. Okay. And then the other thing is that there's such a perpetuation of of I mean lies. I mean, like, we can't even get to understanding what is the truth anymore. So almost having a conversation, doesn't bring us together because we don't have the standard of what is truth. And so there's some things that gotta be fixed in order for it to be a victory. Or else we might get the justice, but we will lose the ability to vote.
Yeah.
We'll lose the ability to vote, and we're not going to be able to have our voices heard. And if our voices are not heard, the policies that make it okay for a police officer to kill a Black and brown person continue to exist with all the protections that go along with it. And that, my family, I got to take this other call. I'm telling you, I love you, but I know Josh is going to bring it home. So I'm counting on you, brother. Do your thing.
All right, man, take it easy.
He done already shut it down. He like, I hope I ain't quash your victory conversation. Well, shut the door, cancel the meeting, it's over. I'm done. See you later. All right, Steve, thanks again for joining us. We'll pass the goodness on you.
So I mean, I think that victory. So victory looks like we find a cop who kills a Black man guilty, but then we don't see another police officer shoot another innocent Black person. That's what victory looks like. So we have a guilty verdict, and then in hours, I believe in hours later, we see an incident of another Black person being killed, an unarmed Black person being killed. And so victory says that the moral consciousness has been altered, that the thinking, the approach has changed. And I think also victory looks like changing in policing and policies. Why is it that our communities are policed in a way that when we present a threat, we are automatically deserving of death, but yet our counterparts get tased, they get to run around, they get to respond back to the police, and there's no harm or foul in that. You know what I mean? That's a problem for me. And I think, another thing is that I get it. It's like when you go up against the gang in your community, you consider Uncle Tom. And so maybe that's why white police officers don't kill white people, because they don't want to be the Uncle Toms. But what happens when, your loyalty to your people creates a threat for the lives of other people? When your loyalty to your society is creating evil and destroying the nation. And I really do think that that's something that, we got to get in the mindset of people. I say the same thing even in our own communities, when we have people in our own communities who kill and, who steal and, promote drugs and things, sell and things like that, sometimes we're doing damage to our own societies. And so I think that small significant changes, that's what they call it in the theory of change. Small significant changes. I just think we're tired of seeing small changes. We want to start seeing these changes spread and increase in ways where we actually feel it. We don't feel the effects of the George Floyd verdict yet. We don't feel it. I mean, maybe I might be alone in it. I don't feel it. You know what I mean? Great, he was found guilty, but I don't really feel the effects of it to the extent that I can walk out here and feel like I won't be next. And so when I start to feel it, then maybe I might start saying it's a victory. But I'm not gonna pull out the party hat, the bells and the whistles and all that stuff right now because I don't feel it yet.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you say that because I don't think you are alone in that. Right, I was reading today, and one of the quotes in regards to the case was, this verdict was considered one small victory in the social justice reform. And I love when people talk about this social justice reform, what that means, what that looks like, because when we talk about social justice, it is not justice for one part of society, separate groups of society, right? And quite frankly, justice for our counterparts does not look like it does for us. It never has, right? So, for your son, when he has to watch, a Black man being, murdered in the street, what justice does that say for him in his future? Right? That it could happen to me. Will it happen to me? How do I know? And what do I do? Right? And when we talk about this notion of social justice reform, as you stated, if the policy doesn't change, then what have we really done?
Right.
What have we really done if it does not affect law enforcement agencies across the nation to say, though we don't do it, right? Because that was the talk, right? When it became the no knee on the neck policy, right? Well, we don't do it. Okay, well, what do you want to do to ensure that it doesn't happen?
Right.
Because they may not have done it before, but it was in their policy and in their training, as a usable technique.
Right.
So what happens now when we make these changes and implement these, new reforms? But what does it look like in policy execution? Are we retraining these officers now, or are we saying stop the policy and read it?
Right. And that goes along the lines of, for example, in child welfare, we have to go through every year. It seems like we got to take HIPAA training, and we have to, go through these various trainings and stuff like that, and we have to get 20 hours of training every fiscal year. Whether or not you can go through the training and not apply what you learned, but the thing about it is, if in your documentation or if in your handling of a case you do something wrong, you're going to be called to the carpet and it's going to come up. And so how do we, I think that if you put new policies in place, that's a start, but then it's how do you keep them accountable? And so, how many flags do you have to have in your file before we decide that you don't need to be a beat cop? How long do you serve on the force before we say, you know what, you were here when we started this and your approach is antiquated and we need to take you off the street because you will do more harm than you will do good, And so I think that changing the mindset of police officers begins with ridding forces of police officers who are so tenured that they're teaching negative behaviors. One movie I love is Black and Blue.
Mm-hmm.
And so I love that movie because it just shows how you can come into a system. And if you don't buy into the system, you will become the enemy. And so, another thing I like about the movie is that, the power of the body cam. And I should say the power and the lack thereof of the body cam. because I do think that when that whole idea of police officers wearing body cams and things like that, I think that was a good idea. But what happens in an instance where an officer is turning their camera off, or technology, anything can happen with technology. I ain't had a problem with my Zoom connection since the pandemic, and then today, while we on this interview, on this conversation, I start having issues with my Zoom. You know what I mean? And so technology is a tricky thing that can be manipulated. You know, same reason why when incidents happen, body cam footage is not released immediately. you know, and I ultimately believe sometimes it might be altered and doctored. You know what I mean? Because it's anything is feasible with technology nowadays. Anything is feasible, and so I think that we have to see a lot of nuance in policing. We have to see a lot of nuance in policing. And I've had this conversation even more recently, even as it pertains to policing in Philadelphia, that we we struggle and we fight with changes in policing because we struggle with a union that does not cooperate and encourage progressive change. So I, you know, I it's hard. I'll be honest with you. It's really hard. And I can see why police, new police recruiting numbers are down, and why people don't want to be a part of a system that is, to an extent, for some, it can be like there are good cops out here. I ultimately believe and know some. There are good cops out here, but there are also some ones that you know create a bad taste in the mouth of people, and looking and hinder you from calling the police. So when there's no police in place, you start self-policing.
Doesn't always make it legal, right?
right.
But one thing that I think that's important that you said, and hope that the people who are listening to us tonight do not take for granted, is that we are not saying that the verdict did not help. We are not saying that the verdict was not a positive. I believe that what is being said tonight is that it's not the only thing we should settle for. This is not a place where we stop fighting for change. It's not the moment where we take off, our or take down our guard and believe that all things are right in the world now, but we use it as momentum to continue to effectuate change across the board. Speaking personally as someone who has worn the badge and worn the uniform, there are very much good officers out here. There are very much good people behind the badge, but it does get overwhelmed. It does get kind of darkened by those who do not, by those who do not see humanity and see people through their implicit and explicit bias, and that is a problem. And it is my firm belief, and I think the belief of many others, that George Floyd died because of the explicit bias of a man who did not care about who he was as a human being. It wasn't about any other. He knew him from this, he knew him from that. He did not care about him as a human. If George Floyd was purple, he still wouldn't have cared.
Right.
And that, I think, speaks to who we are as a people and what we have to stand for, is that we are building a future for the next generation, for your son, your daughter, many others who are coming, and they deserve a country, they deserve a city, they deserve a place where they can live and exist and not live in fear.
Yeah.
And not live in fear. So that the 1 year anniversary, I feel like ultimately was a reminder that we're not done. We're not done.
Yeah.
The discomfort that he's suffering right now, being incarcerated or whatever he's going through, is no comparison
No.
to the 9 minutes and 29 seconds.
Yeah.
So as we prepare to close, Pastor Gooden, is there anything that you would like to share with the people as it relates to, how we move forward, what it looks like for us to really effectuate these changes and achieve these goals, and even further, even more, how do we protect our children, our culture, to ensure um, that those who police us don't make our children and our sons and our fathers the next George Floyd of the world?
So I think that Ken Roberts said it earlier when he said we have to utilize our voice. We have to vote. At 4:45 on, I think it was uh, May 18th, last Tuesday, 4:45 p.m. I was number 53 to vote in my polling place, which let me know that people weren't coming out. Now, for the presidential election, I was standing in line. For this election, I walked right in, voted, walked right back out. So we must utilize our voice to vote at every election. You can't complain about voting, and then when you have the opportunity to vote, you pick and choose what's important and what's not important. Every election is important because it determines and dictates the fate that will affect us as human beings. I think also we have to realize that one victory is not enough for us to stop fighting. That we need continuous victories. We don't just need one victory. We need continuous victories in this battle as we pursue justice. We need continuous victories. And so we cannot allow one victory for us to just say, all right, we done. You know what I mean? We're done marching. We're done protesting. We're done lifting our voice. No, we have to cry aloud continuously until we see long-term change. And then lastly, in terms of our children, parents have to be accountable. I stand on that. Parents have to be accountable. Know where your children are. Know what your children get into. And when they getting into things that they ain't got no into, call it out. We can't be afraid to raise our children. We cannot be afraid to raise our children. We can't be afraid to have the difficult conversations with our children that will save their lives. If you love your child, have a conversation with them that will save their life. Otherwise, you're just as guilty as Derek Chauvin. You're just as guilty. So you can't get mad at the police officer for taking a life when you didn't do anything in the process to help save their life. So, yeah, that's my story. Sticking to it.
In the words of the season saints, baby, that was signed, sealed, and delivered. And delivered. So no, we listen. We appreciate the honesty. We appreciate the truth, the realness, and the transparency by which you share tonight. Because at the end of the day, we cannot forget that though we pull on our leaders, whether it be spiritually, politically, professionally, for so many things, that the reality is that they are people. And these things affect them. So we thank you so very greatly, you and Brother Ken, for your time, for always being open and honest on these What's Happening Brother platforms, and for pulling in and pulling out as well the real thoughts and feelings and perspectives of our Black men, because we need to know and we need to feel it so that we can know what to do to help, what we need to do to support, and how do we stand in the gap to cover you all as you deal with these things, because watching it is one thing, hearing it is one thing, but living it and experiencing it is something totally different. So thank you so very much for joining us tonight. You are much appreciated. And thank all of you who are watching and joined us tonight on the Facebook Live. We appreciate you. We hope that you were able to take something from this to share with your husbands, your sons, your fathers, your nephews, whomever the men are in your life, so that they can too stay safe and effectuate as a good. Pastor Michelle gonna be mad at me for this. Good trouble, Michelle says. Okay, Michelle wants us to effectuate good trouble. All right. All right. John Lewis does too, but Pastor Michelle wants you to effectuate good trouble in the world. Okay. Good trouble, good trouble. But no, it is good to inspire change. And we can inspire change if we don't stop and fight. So we appreciate you, Pastor Josh. Thank you so much. Appreciate you. All right, everyone, have a wonderful evening, and thank you again for joining us. We'll see you next month for What's Happening, Brother. Take care.